before we go into DaVinci Resolve, a quick word on myself. My name is Niels Briard. I am a bat ecologist based in Belgium. I specialize in acoustics, but I have a very broad interest in technology. And I do the occasional video editing for wildlife videos. And so I've been playing with DaVinci Resolve for quite a while, and I use it to edit the recordings of my workshops, my courses, all that stuff. I will answer that question in a second. And I kept seeing posts on Facebook about asking questions about which software can do this particular function, and I think every single time my answer was always DaVinci Resolve. But the issue with that is that you've got two ways to learn it. Actually, you've got three. You can look up a YouTube video for every single thing you want to do, or you can go through the unusable user manual. I don't know if you've seen it. Actually, it should have been installed on your computer alongside the software. It's 3,600 pages. And every time I've tried to look up something in it, I was not able to find anything. So it's not very usable. You might find it usable. Most people I've talked to do not. And then there's options like me, like this workshop, where it's dedicated training for what you want to do. So here we're really going to focus on the functions that you might need as an ecologist. This is not a video editing course in any way, shape, or form, because 30 minutes is nowhere near enough for this. And there's plenty of fantastic people online who will provide training in DaVinci Resolve for video editing. This is specifically for ecologists for basic functions. Now, I included instructions on my website regarding how to download the software, as well as hardware requirements that you might may or may not be an issue with your computer. So one thing I like to say is that it works on a lot more computers than the ones that meet the minimum requirements. The minimum requirements are they're made for people who edit actual high quality footage. You have to understand that the resolutions and file sizes that we work with as ecologists is usually much lower. So you can get away with something like a small thin and light laptop. It will struggle a bit and do not have any Chrome, Firefox, or anything like that open in the background, because that will destroy your performance. But it will work, okay? Now, the difference between Resolve and Resolve Studio is quite simple. The Resolve is free, Resolve Studio is not. So DaVinci Resolve is free, and it's not just a free trial, it's free forever, and you can download updates and things like that. There are a number of features that are not included, but for this workshop, and actually for any type of work you might be doing in the ecology sector, the free Resolve vanilla is perfectly fine. The studio version adds more stuff if you start using this software professionally, as in video editing and actually producing content on a regular basis, which is not the focus of this small workshop again. Now, if you've had issues installing it, I can maybe help you, but usually there's a lot more information online about the particular operating system you're using, the computer you're using. There's lots of different factors involved in any issues you might have. So the first thing you're going to do when opening DaVinci Resolve is starting a project. Now, there's several ways you can do this, as in there's several variants. You can have a single project, or you can have a folder. So you can create a new folder or new project. New folder might be useful, for example, if you have one site that you will survey multiple times in a season, so that they're all together if you want to go back to them, or just don't bother because you can just keep the exported footage and not care about that. That's perfectly fine. So I have already created a project for this workshop. And this is what you will be greeted with. At the bottom, so first I'll just quickly give you an overview of the various tabs and toolbars that this software has, because there's a lot, and the vast majority of it is of no use whatsoever to us. It's very useful if you start editing something of higher production value, such as a film, and a number of very famous films and series are being edited in DaVinci Resolve. I think there's a page somewhere on the Blackmagic website with a list of all the recent blockbusters that have been edited in DaVinci Resolve. So there's a lot of stuff, and if you feel overwhelmed, just try to focus on what we do need. So at the bottom, there's a few tabs. There's the Media tab, the Cut tab, Edit, Fusion, Color, Fairlight, and Deliver. They are put in the order that most video editors would use them. The reality of it is that you don't actually need all of them. Actually, I just use one or two of them, 3 if you count Deliver. So Media is where you would import your footage. So there's multiple ways you can do this. You can navigate to the files, or you can just, if you've got File Explorer, it's the same on Mac OS, by the way, except you'd have Finder open instead of File Explorer, and you can just drag and drop stuff. Hang on, I've got a folder here. This is the content I like to use for this workshop, so you can just drag and drop and it's fine. Another way you can do this, why can't I delete this? Another way you can do this is to actually drag and drop it into the second menu, which is the Cut menu. Or you can even just drop it in the Edit menu, which is the one we're going to use. So the difference between the Cut and Edit menu is of no relevance to what we're doing here. The Cut is supposedly to, it has different ways you can go through the footage and just makes it easier to do rough edit. So the idea is that you do a rough edit with the Cut and then edit the transitions and add titles and stuff like that in the Edit tab. But to be honest, I do everything in the Edit tab and it works just fine. So we've got footage here, and we are working what's called a timeline. Now, what I would recommend, if you have multiple cameras, for example, is that you create a timeline per camera, and then you can name it camera 2. And in this timeline, so you would have your timeline 1, which is camera 1, and you can change the name of it if you want. But so when you double click it, obviously nothing happens. So this bit is your timeline, and you would import your footage just by dragging and dropping. A lot of stuff in DaVinci Resolve happens just by dragging and dropping. So for example, if I had 2 cameras, so here I'm in camera 2, because you can see up there it's selected, and this might also be from camera 2, but then from camera 1 I've got this piece of footage. It is not mine. Some people in the audience might recognize it, but it is the only footage I saw that was portrait instead of landscape, so it allows me to show you how to flip it. So, and now if I go back to camera 2, my footage is here, and camera 1, my footage is there. So it's nice and separate if that helps you. There's no, I mean, you don't have to do that. It's just something I would find useful. Let's just remove this for now. Yeah. Now, when you drag and drop footage in your timeline, you might be prompted with a, actually, no, I don't think I can show it, but you might have a message saying that the frame rate of your timeline does not match the frame rate of your footage, and then just ask you if you want to change the timeline's frame rate or not. you can just click change. It makes no difference to your footage. It's just the timeline settings that are going to change. You can also change the settings somewhere in here. Yeah, you have to go here, timeline settings, and then you can change the I think you can resolution, all that stuff. But DaVinci Resolve is pretty clever, so it is going to extract all that from your footage, so you shouldn't have to worry about that. Now I was going to show you through the tabs. This is the Fusion tab. So Fusion is everything related to effects. So you can do some very complex video computer effects in here. You could create an entire Marvel movie in this if you wanted to, but this is not really of much use to what we're doing. Now in the color section, this is where you might want to edit the how your footage looks. So this is the Photoshop side of the software, if you want. Now, lift, gamma, gain, offset, I don't think you would really want to use that. But what you might want to use is stuff like contrast and maybe shadow and highlights, because most of the footage we're working with is fairly monochromatic, even when it's thermal stuff. So if you want to take DaVinci Resolve beyond just footage of infrared cameras and thermal cameras, you obviously can, and then you might want to play with those color wheels. But beyond this, you might want to play around with the contrast a little bit if you want to make your image look a bit nicer. The Fairlight tab is of no use to us, but if you want to edit, so Fairlight is everything to do with audio, and it looks very similar to this tab, except it only does audio. And then you can add a lot of effects to audio. Again, not really relevant here, because if you just want to add audio to sound, you can do that in the edit tab. Fairlight is to really start mixing advanced stuff. If you want to make your own, I've used Fairlight to make low mixes for bird ringing, for example. I have used Fairlight for that. It works perfectly fine. And again, all these tabs are included in the free version. I don't have any additional tab that you would. And then the last tab is one I'll briefly mention at the end, is where you choose the settings to export your footage. Now, if you are only interested in reviewing your footage and maybe adding a timestamp or something like that, if you are only interested in viewing the footage, which is perfectly fine in this software, it is a valid way of doing it. It works great. Then you don't need the Deliver tab. If, however, you want to start modifying it, adding timestamps, things like that, cutting it, editing it, all of that, then you will need to go through the Deliver tab, which we'll briefly mention at the end. Now, I have taken a selection of clips here. Let's drag this first one, and then let's drag this second one. So the first one is footage from a DSLR camera, not infrared or anything. It's just at dusk, and you can see that. So I don't know if you can hear the audio, but there is a bad detector next to it, just to add a little bit of sound, and occasionally there's a Dobentons flying by. I think there's one about now. Maybe I missed it. But one thing, so you can navigate using this red bar. You can click and drag it. You can put it anywhere you want. This allows you to scrub really quickly through footage. As you can see up there, it shows you the speed at which you're scrubbing. just to explain what's going on here, it starts at 1 hour. Not sure why, doesn't really matter. Then you have minutes, then you have seconds, and the last bit, they're not microseconds, they are frames. So if your footage is at 30 frames per second, it will go up to 30 before going to the next second. Just a quick note, because it's not necessarily obvious. So when you are scrolling, you can see, you can really move frame by frame if you scroll very slowly with your mouse. Now, this is where a less powerful laptop, for example, might start to struggle. If you start scrolling very quickly, it will drop frames and you won't see every single one of those frames. I think here it is showing every single one of them, even though it's going through them very quickly. You can see the bats here, and then you can very easily just go back and forth. And if you just want to play the footage, the space bar just works. So that is if you just want to play footage. Now, I've added them one after the other. You could do that if you have multiple videos to watch one after another. It just clips to the other one. This is recorded from a thermal imaging camera, a thermal imaging scope, sorry. And I don't think there's any bats in it. I'm not seeing anything. But as you can see, it is possible to scroll very quickly. And at least on this machine, it does not look jagged, as long as it doesn't hit the, as long as it's not stopped by the mouse, basically. When it stops, it's just because I have to reset my mouse. And I have a solution to that I will show at the end. Okay, so this is, let's just delete this to have a bit more space. Now, for many cases, it might be easier to point the camera in a portrait mode instead of landscape. Now, you might not have an issue with the fact that you then have to watch it flipped 90 degrees, but if you do want to flip it, there is the option. So at the top right, you've got mixer, metadata. It doesn't really matter. If you want to have a look at the metadata, so the metadata would include the date of recording, as well as if your camera is set properly, it will also have the time at which the recording was started and the time at which the recording was stopped. So that is very useful if you want to have time of emergencies. So a little incentive to make sure that your camera is it's got the proper time of day. And then here in the transform tab, you can rotate it however you want. You can make people seasick by doing that, or you can just type a value. So DaVinci Resolve has this stupid slider. So if you just click on the number, you can see there's an arrow going left and right. You can go left and right, but it's just a bit silly, especially in the, I think they might have fixed it now. So this is a 90-degree flip. Now I should have done a minus 90-degree flip, I think. Not sure which way this thing is oriented. And yes, I will fix the crop in a minute. But in the deliver tab, you've got this thing. It starts at 80,000, and then you can scroll back using the mouse, but it's silly because you want it much lower than 80,000. You don't want, yeah, it's just a bit silly. So I do not recommend just scrolling that way. You can just type in values. Plus or minus 90 should do the trick for most things. Is add a timestamp. The best way to do that is add all your footage. So let's really grab everything I've got here. I'm in the cut tab, whatever. I'm in the edit tab. As you can see, they're all together, okay? They've all received a timestamp. This is from a thermal camera. It does not have a useful timestamp because the thermal camera has not been set to, I've not set it to have a date and time. Everything's together. Going to the deliver tab, as you can see, the 4 files are still separate. You do whatever you need to do here, give it a name, nice and easy to remember. Export as individual clips. and then you will have your 4 files, a copy of your 4 files with just the timestamp. That's just the very easy, quick workflow to just add timestamps. Let's go back to my beautiful Dobentons footage here. Where's the bat? Here's the bat. It's nice and in focus and everything. So let's let's imagine you want to add a title. Okay. Let's go into effects up here. So you've got two rows of toolbars. You've got the top one, which has the workspace, but remember the workspace. Hey, you don't actually need to go into the color tab for the workspace for the data burning. You can just go into the edit tab. That's good to know. The tutorial I watched way back was wrong, and I had not realized that. So yeah, just in the edit tab, you can just click into workspace, data burning, you're good to go. Actually, I should have probably talked about file formats at the beginning, but I've got another opportunity to do that in a second. So we'll answer the question in the chat in a second. So when you click onto effects, you can remove the media pool if you don't need it. So the media pool is just literally a pool with all your media files. Effects opens this thing. I think you can separate it if you wanted to. If you've got a very large screen, you might want to split things up. And then you go into titles, and you've got a whole range of presets. Now, honestly, I'd suggest you try to find one preset that works for you, because it is possible to create anything you want with the Fusion tab, but you're going to lose a lot of time by doing so. But if you've got time, that's perfectly fine. So let's say you want to use this one. Okay. Now I've lost my bat. But as you can see, we've got a title now. Now this title, as you can see, it can be a lower third with a more, and then, yeah, all you need to do is just double click on it, and then you've got the title, this video, and then you can just type in whatever you want, changing font, position, everything again, just to make it nice and pretty. And the way you would drag and drop it is not, so don't put it in the middle, because then it will go to black. You've had to drag it on top, and actually now it has chopped my recording. Just add it on top, and it is then going to overlay over your footage. So you might want to add the species, location, whatever you want. It's nice and easy. So again, effects tab up there, titles, click and drag, click on it. You can change your title, change the settings, because if you've got a fade, you can change the timing of that as well. If you want the title to be overlaid for longer, just click and drag. You take an edge, you get this weird little symbol, and then just click and drag, and it will just play for as long as you have overlaid it. You might also want to add, perhaps at the end of the video, if it's something you send to a client or something, you might want to add your logo, details about the project, your contact details, stuff like that. I don't know what you might want to include, but if that is something you want to include, or if it is a presentation, you can absolutely. So as you can see here, I'm not sure, it's probably not very big, but this is a JPEG file, this is an MOV file, this is an MP4 file, and this is a DNxHD file. So you can import files of many different formats. I think the full list is on the Blackmagic Design website. It is very extensive. As far as I know, it supports most, if not all, of the formats that you might encounter for the applications that we are discussing today. But Piers in the audience had issues with AVF files produced by a thermal imaging camera, I believe. So when you encounter that issue of a file that's not compatible, you can usually just get a converter to do that online. Just type in whatever your file name is, so AVF to MP4 converter, do that, should be fine. If it's just for viewing, it shouldn't be a problem when the converter tells you there'll be a watermark. If it's for a presentation, that might be an issue. In the case of AVF, if that is the format that you are using, so that would be .avf at the end of your file name. VLC, which is also free, it's the little traffic cone symbol, can convert AVF to MP4, and then you can play around with it in DaVinci. So as you can see, you can have multiple different file formats. It is going to play them alongside each other just fine. Don't need to worry about converting them all. So if you've got different cameras, doesn't matter. If you want to add a graphic like this one, so here, voila, I'm mentioning the about acoustics course I will be running in 3 weeks with a very international focus instead of focusing on a particular continent, where we'll go through everything sound related, as well as 2 more in-depth modules on European bat identification. So that's not just UK, it's all UK bats plus a few more. And then I've got an Audiomoth online conference coming on lots of different taxonomic groups that can be served with Audiomoth. So there'll be 10 talks. It's online in the second half of November. Okay, okay, you might want to show this, and then it's as simple as just clicking and dragging it at anywhere you want. So now let's say, okay, so actually this this video, it needs a bit more information. So if you put it on top, it is going to be played instead of the video. But now let's say, so this means that this portion of the video, the portion that's underneath, will not be seen. So let's say, okay, but I just want to interrupt the video with something, but I don't want to miss a bit of the video. So that means you need to cut it. So we use our blade B. By default, the blade is going to snap where your cursor is, and your cursor will, when you play it, you'll see that it will stick to certain positions. You can always move it, but it will tend to try to stick to ends and starts of clips. So that's usually a good thing. Sometimes it is not, but yeah. So use the blade. The blade also will stick to the cursor. We've split those two, and then we can just move and drag. And then when I do this, it's going to play the clip, going to play my slide, and then go back to where it stopped with the clip. And if I've got a title, and again, you can overlay the title over anything you want. It's not very visible, it's there, but because it's white, I think we can change it probably. Yeah, let's change it to glorious pink. There we go. Again, you can overlay anything you want. There is a time code on this one. Obviously, there is no time code because it is a fixed image, but there you go. If you want this image to be displayed for longer, because you need to talk about your courses or whatever, you can, like the titles, just drag it. And if you want to shorten it, same thing. And then just snap the recording, the rest of the video there. If you right click your footage, so go to whichever bit, let's try to find the bats again, just to make it a bit more exciting. So that's another way to scroll. It's just, I think, a bit trickier than with the red bar. I saw something here. Where is it? Okay, I can't find the bats anymore. Doesn't matter. If you right click on the image and then just say grab still, you now have a still. And then you can right click on that, export it as a JPEG. So for example, I know that the infrared guidelines will recommend showing a picture of at the darkest time of the survey, showing the illumination of the building or the roost, whatever. This is one way of doing it. So you can just so like I showed, I did not do, oh, it's because the bats are here, that's why I couldn't find the bats. But if so, you have to have your clip selected, go into color, and then actually don't need to have your clip selected. It's just the timeline. Yes, it is just the timeline. So, and then there we go. There's a bat. So I grab that still. They are given some funny names. Not sure why, but when you export it, you can name it whatever you want. Let's do an export. So let's remove all that stuff. Let's take this guy. Okay, we've scrolled. I think there was a bat around 26, something like that. Okay, so here's a bat. It starts moving around here, so maybe we'll cut it here. B for the blade. I have selected the bit before, delete. Scroll past it with, okay, the bat is now gone. There is another one moving. So, okay, 2 bats are gone. We've got blade again, B, select the other bit, select a bit afterwards. So we are not left just with the emergence of those 2 bats. If this is the clip that you want to use with the timecode, actually, I might just, because this just looks silly with where it is, because it's a bit clipped. There we go. It is now no longer cut. And I would like this to now become a video, because now it's only, as I said, it has, none of your original files have been changed. So this doesn't really exist in that if you close DaVinci Resolve, there's no way of accessing the clip that we've made here. So this is where the Deliver tab comes in. It's got a lot of options. So I would recommend just exporting as MP4. Don't worry about the encode. You would not have choice there anyway with the free version. Resolution, stick it to whatever it says, because it will have decided something for you. Now, I would play with the quality setting. Don't leave it to this, because this is assuming you want to use this for production. This is not what you want. You want files as small as possible, so they don't cost you £100 per file to store. Which, if you leave it at 80,000 kilobytes per second, those files will be massive. This one file might actually be a few hundred megabytes. So I would say, for the purposes of this, if it's just for archive, you might want to aim for 4,000 to 8,000. 4,000 is perfectly fine, and then just click to add to render queue. Oh yeah, you have to pick a location. Let's just pick a location for the purposes of this workshop. Add to render queue. As you can see, it's here. You have to click on render all, and it will render. Depending on the machine that you have, it will be quick or not. I do have a pretty fast processor, so that's why it was very quick. But oh, it's open here. As you can see, I've given a very useful name here. And then, as you can see, we now have our footage with the timecode at the bottom, and we only have the 2 emergences. So there we go. So again, so I've gone to the Deliver tab, pick your settings here. So the single clip to individual clip here is a useful setting when you've chopped up everything. If you just want one video, then just click on single clip. And this is where it might also be useful to have different timelines for different videos here, because if you have edited all the footage for your different cameras and you are ready to export everything, but you want one video file per camera showing the highlights of your emergence, for example, this might be one way of doing it. You've cut up everything. You might have multiple emergences. Again, the time code will tell you when there's a gap. Give this would be camera 1, and so if you have multiple timelines selected, they would show up here, and just export timeline 1 as one file, and then export timeline 2 as another file, and stuff like that. So the reason this might be useful for you, particularly if you don't have a very powerful machine, is because then you can just leave your machine exporting it overnight or while you're having dinner or whatever. Because it will, if you don't have a powerful machine, you will not be able to do anything else while you are processing. So just so you know, this is going to be the really hard bit on your laptop, on your computer.